Hi there, welcome back. So I'm in this building. I'd moved in. I was about an hour away from work. It was expensive at that point. I was not able to save any money to pay for anything at all. I was very, very sick. In fact, I felt I wasn't able to do renovations. I worked a couple hours a day for a few days the entire time I was there, but essentially I would get home from work on the days that I was able to go to work in Portland, and I would be so overwhelmed with exhaustion. I couldn't do the work there, and I felt really guilty about it. And he didn't know, my landlord, and I'm sorry, not my landlord, my client didn't know that for a long time. I didn't tell him because I was hoping that I would start feeling better. That didn't happen. And eventually I told him, but for a long time I harbored a lot of guilt for not fulfilling my end of the bargain, which was I would live there, but I would live there because I'm doing the renovations there. I would get home and I was just so exhausted. And those were the days that I was able to go to work. In addition to this, there were mice everywhere. The place was infested. And I had a battle with these mice for months before finding out that the downstairs, I had gone into the downstairs apartment to fix that tenant's sink. I was the property manager for this place at that point. Might as well be. I was living there. And I saw the state of his apartment, and the mice had free reign, and they were thriving in there. So no matter what precautions I would take upstairs, my food was all locked away. There was nowhere they could get to my food, but they kept coming up, and they had destroyed all of my clothes, all of my bedding, my towels, everything. And I except for my clothes that I had hanging up, but I couldn't hang up everything. I had things in banana boxes. They were the only boxes I could get when I had to move out on such short notice. And I tried to stack everything up. I was trying my best to keep these mice out of there. I had dozens of traps set up. Nothing I could do was getting rid of these mice, and they were destroying absolutely everything. And I had no other place to put anything. I didn't have any money for a storage unit or anything. So all that stuff got ruined that was in there. While I was there, I thought every day, I spent hours and hours a day thinking about the events that happened with my parents and trying to understand the source of their behavior. Because what I couldn't understand was how people who cared about someone could continually make such bad judgment calls. Because that's what was happening. I would say, I need this, or I need you to do or not do something, and it was they always knew better than me, and it would result in causing me harm. And so I started thinking about all these things that happened in the past, and I realized I thought my mother was suffering from some sort of, I think that she would say that she loves me, but I think it's more of the type of sort of selfish love that maybe a child might experience before they gain the emotional maturity to understand that when you love someone, it really means that you've got to respect their needs. And I was trying to figure out my father's placement in this. He absolutely adores my mother, and there has never been a time when he has taken my side. He has always been the sort of enforcer when I was growing up. My mother and I are getting into an argument, and he will take her side, and sometimes it was not pretty, I think that this is what I think. I think that at some point in my childhood, there was such an amount of there was, my mother and I were at such odds that I think my father saw me as an obstacle to enjoying her company. I think that I don't know. I think that I think he harbored resentment toward me, perhaps because there seemed to always be this conflict between my mother and I. And maybe he certainly didn't like the stress. I didn't like the stress either. I wanted no part of it, but I couldn't help but find myself in the middle of it. She initiated it, and I think she required it. I think she thrives in an environment of chaos, and she always has. In fact, I don't think I have a memory of any event that we like a family event, a family outing, that didn't result in her ruining it. I have a lot of memories of being in the car, excited about what we're about to do, going out to the beach maybe or something. We are embarking on a journey, and she had always created a catastrophe out of it. Everything became a crisis situation. And even as a child, not having much life experience, I would see her creating an issue out of, even then, I would say, what's the problem? There's no issue here. There's no reason to be upset. But I feel like she essentially ruined every possible good time that we could have had. But he is so blinded by her that he will not accept that she has a problem. And I think that at some point in time he started resenting me, and I don't think he loves me. And you can't make someone love you. But that has resulted in decisions that he's made about me. And there are some instances that I remembered from my past involving my father that made me seemed to corroborate this story or give some substance to this claim that I'm making. It's a hypothesis that I'm making, and I want to. There are just a couple things I'm going to mention. Few things I'm going to mention. When I was 20, my father had a massive stroke, and it resulted in him being. He had to learn how to do everything again. He was essentially bedridden. He had to learn how to walk. He had to learn how to pick things up and speak. And it was like he was starting as an infant. And he really bounced back eventually. He regained a lot of what he used to be. But there was a residual, he had been diminished. And there was always, he never came back 100%. when I moved out of, when I had come out of the hospital, when my parents had committed me, I was living with a girlfriend a lot at the time. I had a believe it or not, in the state that I was in, I ended up having a girlfriend and living with her a lot. And but when we broke up and I revealed to my parents, this issue with me, and they had me committed, after that point I started living with them, and then I moved away for school, and then I came back after graduating school just for a period of time until I found my own place, and pursued my career in boat building. While I was living there, I noticed that my mother was very cruel to my father, and it really angered me. And I repeatedly would, I'd get her, I would tell her about this when he wasn't around. I didn't want him to know that I was coming to his defense, because I didn't want him to think that I thought him incapable of defending himself. But I would reprimand her about this, and I would be very angry and say, "You've got to stop this. He's not the same person that he was back." Because she would make fun of his shortcomings, the things that he was a very strong, capable man before the stroke, and it really affected him. And she would make fun of him, and I could only imagine how terrible that made him feel. And it really, really bothered me. And I was able to witness it because I was living there. I moved away, and I had would come back and I'd visit, and I'd witness it while I was there visiting. And she had mentioned she completely forgot about his stroke. I would say, he's not the same as he used to be before he had his stroke. He has limitations, and you've got to recognize that. And she would say, "Oh, I forgot about the fact that he had a stroke." And I said, "How can you possibly forget he had a stroke? I think about it on a daily basis. He's not the same person he used to be." And I couldn't believe how self-centered you'd have to be to forget about such the single most life-changing event for him, and for her to forget about that, his wife. I was appalled by it. And so I was working at the boatyard, and I had at this point reprimanded her many, many times about her behavior with him. And I received a phone call. I was at work one day. I received a phone call from her, and she had said, she asked me if I knew where my father was, and I said no. So the story was that he was working for the Maine Turnpike at this point. They had phoned him. The Maine Turnpike had phoned my mother, saying that my father had left his station, which he was the kind of guy that would get to work half an hour early and never miss a day of work. He was very, very responsible. He had a fantastic work ethic. So what had happened, apparently, was he had left his booth and left his wedding ring there in the booth. And he didn't return home. And she notified me of this hours after he had left. And she didn't seem to... She called me and she was concerned, but I didn't think she appreciated the gravity of the situation. What I thought was the worst. I thought, he's leaving a very clear message right now. And he is doing something, and he's done something that is completely out of character. And I feared the absolute worst. So I raced home. I was an hour away from my parents' house, being at work in Portland. I raced home. And I ran upstairs, talked to my mother to see if she had heard anything, if any information had come in. Nope. I went downstairs. This is the first thing I did. I went downstairs to, he had a little table on the side of on one side of the couch. There was a lamp there, and he would keep a notebook and a pen. It was sort of like his version of a desk. And I looked there, and I was looking for something in particular, and I found it, and it was a note. And considering the ridiculous language restrictions they have on YouTube, you know what kind of note it was. It was the kind of note that reveals that you're at the end. Now, that note, I read it real quick. It wasn't long. It was a note telling my mother what his intentions were to do to himself, and that it was because of the way she treated him. So I went upstairs and I presented that note to her, and I said, "You didn't think to check? You've had it had been, I don't know, 8-10 hours or something since he had left work. You didn't check there to see if he'd left something for you?" No, she did. So clueless. Now, what I'm not mentioning about that note is what it didn't have in it. I was furious with her. First of all, what I am going to say is I immediately contacted the bank that their credit card was issued. I wanted to see what charges were on the card. I wanted to track down his location. The bank was unwilling to give me that information. I contacted the police department, and somehow I got the officer that I spoke with to guess. I don't know how he did it. I persuaded him, told him the situation, how dire it was, what I had found, and that it was time was of the essence. I didn't know where my father was, and this is the only possible way I have to track him down. I have no idea where he is. And he was able to locate the information, what the bank transactions had been over the past 24 hours. It showed that my father had gone. He was down in like Virginia or Rhode Island. He had made it pretty far south, I think on I-95. And he had so there was the last evidence on the billing statement was he probably had gone to a gas station or something like that. So having this information, the only thing I could possibly do, and this was a one in a, I don't know what the odds are, extraordinarily low, probably almost nearly non-existent. But I had to try something. I was about to jump in my vehicle and go south and try to find him and continue my correspondence with my communication with that officer to see where else he was charging his card at, so maybe I'd be able to locate him, if I'd be able to find him at a if he stayed at a hotel or something like that. I could catch him while he was sleeping or something. I could make some time while he was sleeping. I'd be driving toward him. This is my hope. Just as I was about to leave the house, my father came in. He had driven back up. He decided he changed his mind. Anyway, luckily he didn't hurt himself, and but what he didn't reveal in that note, or what he didn't say in that note, was anything about me. He didn't say goodbye to me. And I thought about that over the years. I took inventory of that. I hadn't thought about it much for a while, but I thought that was further evidence that he didn't really care about me that much. If you're leaving this world, wouldn't you say bye to your son if you cared about him? There's another incident. where he had a heart attack, a major heart attack, and I came up from Portland to visit him in the hospital that night. And as and he was conscious at that point. I walked into the room that he was in, and he was lying down, and my mother was there tending to him. And I remember walking in on them, and they were both laughing, and she was, I don't know, she was caring for him in some regard. And as soon as I was visible in the doorway, my father looked at me and he said, "Oh, not him." And he was so honest. He was so disappointed to see me. I left. I knew he didn't want to see me. He wanted nothing to do with me. And I was so worried about him. I had well, before I say what I was about to just say, my mother said, "Oh, it's just the drugs he's on." Those drugs he was on they were making him honest. They were making his responses, they were removing any filter that he had. I loved my father very, very much, even though I didn't think that I always wished that our relationship was better, and I wished that he understood me more and accepted me more for who I am. I think I have something to offer this world, just maybe not exactly what he thought I should offer. He really wanted me to go into the military, I think. I, for as long as I can remember, have had this recurring nightmare where he dies. Every time he dies in that nightmare in my arms. And it is, it's so horrible. It's so terrible. And I wake up crying. I wake up just sobbing. I haven't had that dream in a long time. But it was, I cared for my father deeply. And I think that dream was, if I were to interpret it myself, it was just a way of telling myself, you have a finite amount of time with him. You've got to find a way to spend some good quality time with him before he's gone. And I felt like I was never able to do that, trying to, build my own life and become financially stable enough to be able to spend that time with him was always one of my major priorities. So I just mentioned those things because in trying to piece together the parts of the puzzle that I had in order to construct an image of what is likely going on. I thought those were some pretty crucial parts of that puzzle, which allowed me some insight into his decision-making process. It would make a lot more sense for him to make the decisions he has regarding me if I understood that he didn't care about me, or at least care about me as much as you would think a father probably would. So I thought about that a lot, and eventually, over the course of time living in that building, I was able to